All right. Hi, Claudine. Thank you so much for joining me on our little call interview today. Did you want to start off by introducing yourself and telling the watchers who you are and what it is you do?
Hi, I'm Claudine Gillard. I'm a certified Sleep Sense baby and child sleep consultant. I'm also a Solve Your Sleep adult sleep consultant. I have been a baby and child sleep consultant for nearly 4 years, and that was following a personal experience where my son, for the first couple of years of his life, was a really poor sleeper, and it was a really challenging time for our family. My husband was very involved in my son's sleep and working hard, and I was also sleep deprived because my son was breastfeeding to sleep and was being breastfed throughout the night, most nights. And obviously, it was a tough time for my little boy. When we discovered sleep training through the hiring of a sleep consultant, it was literally a transformative experience for everybody, not least of which our sleep was greatly improved. But the change for me was that it compelled me to become a sleep consultant myself. So, having used a sleep consultant, we decided that I would take a career change and become a sleep consultant. And I'm very, very glad I did. I love what I do. I'm very happy to be able to help people of all ages, babies, children, their parents, and adults themselves to get the sleep that we all deserve.
Okay, so now you've trained as a adult sleep consultant. It's coming up to Sleep Awareness Week, and I just wanted to ask you a few questions. So let's kick off. How many hours of sleep should I be getting every night in general?
Okay, well, for adults, the recommended guideline is between 7 and 9 hours. Um, if you think about the day as it is in terms of 24 hours, we should be awake for 2/3 and asleep for 1/3. So it's approximately 16 hours of day and 8 hours of night.
Nice. If you do that many hours sleep and you get that many, is that enough, or does it have to be really good quality sleep? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so our sleep comprises different stages and different types. And basically, the difference is light and deep, and then something called REM sleep, which is also known as dream sleep. So we need proportionately amounts of different amounts of those stages within our nightly sleep cycles. And a nightly sleep cycle is probably around 90 minutes to 2 hours. And so if you're in bed for 8 hours, you're going to have 4 to 5 sleep cycles. And the sort of time that you would expect to spend in those sleep stages is approximately, and this is kind of just a guideline, 50% in light sleep, 25% in deep sleep, and 25% in REM sleep. So if you are sort of having disproportionately different to those amounts, so if you're having, let's say, more light sleep or more deep sleep, then something's going on. So if you have a bad night's sleep or a night sleep where you have less sleep, your sleep will adjust. And then in subsequent nights, it will compensate. So for example, if you had a night where you had less deep sleep, then subsequent nights you'd catch up on that deep sleep. Same with light sleep. A lot of people assume that we need just the deep sleep, but that's not the case at all. We definitely need the light sleep for other purposes. That's different from deep sleep, and all the stages of sleep are vitally necessary, and we can't do without one or another in favor of the other.
That kind of leads on perfectly to the next question. Like, what's happening when we sleep? What's happening to our bodies and to our minds?
So there's about three main things that's happening apart from the rest. We're having rehabilitation, if you like, of our brain and body. So our organs and our function is resting, but also regenerating. We're having physical rest and regeneration, so our muscles, blood, and tissues. And then we're also having the mental part, which is the sort of dreaming and the neural pathways. So basically, we know that we need to dream, but we don't really know why. But tests and studies have been done to suppress that type of sleep, to check what it would be like for human beings if they didn't have that. And the studies have shown that that's not good for us, it's not healthy. So when I mentioned those 3 stages of sleep, different things happen in light sleep to our body and brain, different things happen in deep sleep to our body and brain, different things happen in REM sleep to our body and brain, and they're all necessary in order for us to do and perform the next day. Just as an aside, because this is an interesting point, I have a question a lot from a lot of people. REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement, which is our dream sleep, we are not moving enough physically when that happens. So our eyelids are moving, and we know therefore there's action of our eyes, but our bodies are not moving. So if you move around in your sleep or thrash about, or your child does, or you can have sounds, then you probably aren't dreaming.
So what are the most common reasons that people can't sleep or struggle with their sleep?
If it's non-medical, so I'll just park that for a second, firstly because I'm not a doctor, but secondly it's a different type of study of the brain anyway. But if it was not a medical issue, a medical issue would be something like sleep apnea, let's say, then normally it's stress or anxiety related. So it's a self-sabotaging of our sleep, often that causes us to not sleep well. I mean, of course, environment's going to play a part, timing's going to play a part. The day that we've just had will play a part, although I guess you could say that falls into the stress or anxiety category. But let's say all things being equal, you've got the right environment, you've got the right timing, you've kind of followed through on your usual routine, you should fall asleep typically well and easily. But if you are in a situation where you've got high stress going on, or there's challenges in life, or for whatever reason the environment's not right, let's say you're away from home, then of course you are going to have a compromised night's sleep.
And what does stress do to our sleep? How does it affect it, and what can we do to kind of counteract it?
It's $1 million question, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing about the stress/anxiety piece is obviously very personal and very individual related. We can often be the saboteurs of our sleep, both deliberately and not deliberately. So I think there's probably no adult human out there who hasn't deliberately done something to avoid sleep, consciously and unconsciously. You can say studying for exams, you can say nights out, you can say travel. There's loads and loads of reasons why we have deliberately kind of disrespected or devalued or not prioritized our sleep, maybe once, maybe twice, maybe more, maybe regularly. Then we just expect it to go well when we want it to. Okay, we expect it to be like a tap or a switch that you can just turn on and off, and brain and body doesn't work that way, unfortunately. And I'm busy enough to tell you that there's plenty of people that are suffering, not funnily, but I'm busy enough to say that there's definitely plenty of people who are both consistently having these struggles and aren't sure kind of what it is that they're doing as to why it's happening. But most of the time it's us, as I say, sabotaging our sleep, let's say with our routine or with our lifestyle. The stress then feeds itself. So, okay, I'm not going to go to bed tonight easily. I know I'm going to have a problem falling asleep. I know that, last night's sleep wasn't good, so I need to compensate tonight. So the self-talk and the self-sabotage is there. Staying up too late, eating rich, spicy foods or drinking something late at night, of course, is going to contribute. There are plenty of people, my own husband included, who can have a cup of coffee very late in the evening and go to sleep, no problem. I mean, as he lowers himself onto the bed, he's already asleep, I know it. But that doesn't necessarily count for everyone, myself included, where I don't have coffee in the afternoon. In the PM, I avoid coffee because my metabolism doesn't respond well to it when it comes to sleep. So there's stuff that we do, as I say, that we know is a contributing factor. The things that things that we're doing where we're trying to avoid being the contributing factor, but unfortunately are the self-talk and the self-sabotage. That's definitely something I can help people with, but it's basically about putting together strategies and putting together ideas where you can avoid creating a problem to create another problem, So the stress, feeds off the stress.
Nice. And just going back, you've been talking about nutrition quite a lot in your recent social media. So are there foods that are detrimental to sleep or foods that help sleep? Anything on that would be amazing.
Yeah. So, we're talking about thinking sensibly and, using knowledge that we've probably already got, but maybe, oh yeah, of course. So I would say if you're going to eat your biggest meal of the day, eating it at night will create an issue potentially whereby you will feel your body processing that, and therefore consequently it may feel both uncomfortable and or difficult to fall asleep. So it may create a situation where it's hard to fall asleep, and it may create a situation where you wake up because of course you're processing it, and that may cause a feeling in you, a physical feeling. So, it's about being sensible in terms of what you eat and when. I would absolutely avoid caffeine after 4 p.m. A hard stop 4 p.m. My advice. Caffeine being caffeinated drinks, particularly. Dark chocolate, you want to tread carefully. So we're talking tea, coffee, colas, energy drinks, dark chocolate, that kind of thing. That's a sensible one to sort of avoid. Slow release carbs are very good to have at bedtime because they're the opposite of what I've just said. We're talking about something healthy. Carbs induces some type of sleepy feeling, and slow release means you probably won't wake up in the night thinking, oh, my goodness, my tummy feels uncomfortable. A good one to have before bed is bananas. Bananas are they have something in them that helps us to feel the right type of sleepy. Oats are also good. Milk is good. If you're the kind of person that likes milk, then warm glass of milk or something milky is also quite good. Something that's got some healthy protein in it, like some nuts, that's also helpful at bedtime. And then things to avoid, you're talking like spicy foods, sort of heavy meat. Some people find alcohol helps them to fall asleep, but alcohol doesn't help you to be asleep. So it's one of those which is kind of a false friend, really. It can also cause you to sweat. So obviously that can create an uncomfortable night's sleep. So yeah, there's things to be sensible with, and there's things to avoid. Most people know their body and how their body reacts to certain things. So it's about applying that, and then having the heavier meal earlier in the day. Or, there's a phrase which is breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a pauper. And that is that exact kind of thinking when it comes to being ready for sleep in the right type of way.
So does sleep affect men and women differently, or different age groups?
Yeah, the problem that women have that's different from men is that our cycle can affect our sleep. And, for most women, that's unavoidable. So there's times in the month where some women will feel more restless and their sleep will be more disturbed. It also happens to women when they're perimenopausal and menopausal. So consequently, there's elements to the hormonal changes in a woman's body that does have a knock-on effect to sleep, for sure. So if those kinds of things are happening, then yeah, it's important for women to identify, maybe keep a diary and track it, or maybe recognize certain times of the month what they're feeling or thinking, or in terms of when you wake up in the morning, do you feel better or worse? Maybe talk to therefore your doctor about that if that's something that you can identify as regularly happening at a certain time of the month. With men, lucky men don't have the cycle, so therefore less affected by hormonal changes, but men are more susceptible to things like snoring, and snoring is often linked with either enlarged adenoids or sleep apnea, or both, which is more predominantly in men. I don't want to be too generalistic, but tends to be. So yeah, those can be the differences.
What is sleep apnea, and like, how would you know if you or maybe your partner is suffering from it?
Okay. Well, my husband has sleep apnea. And one of my good friends has sleep apnea, and she doesn't snore, and my husband was snoring. So snoring is only an indicator. And obviously, if you don't snore, it's easy to think you don't have sleep apnea. And if you're a lady, it's easy to think you wouldn't have sleep apnea. So I don't want to say, definitely if you're snoring, you've got sleep apnea, and definitely if you're not snoring, you don't have it. But if you wake up regularly not feeling great in terms of your rest, there is definitely, it's definitely advisable to get that checked out by a medical doctor who has a specialization in pulmonary, sleep, ear, nose and throat, any of those kinds of specializations. Because what happens with sleep apnea is you basically stop breathing for periods during your nightly sleep. And when your brain recognizes that you've stopped breathing, as in other words, you've obviously not breathing, just to be clear, not safe, your brain triggers that in you and you go conscious, and therefore you wake up. And so then you have to go back to sleep, and then you wake up, and then you go back to sleep, and you wake up, and you go back to sleep. And it can often be related to something physical in your airways and passageways that's enlarged, and then when you're resting your head back that way, it can sort of obstruct your breathing. My husband, as an example, has got broke his nose when he was playing rugby, and so his nose is not obviously symmetrical, and so he's got a sort of side that's more blocked than another. But it was related to with him with weight gain as well, which can happen. He now mouth breathes, which is another indication of sleep apnea, which children can often be an indication in children, which is often then enlarged adenoids, which sometimes is surgery required, sometimes not. But it's basically where you essentially stop breathing during the night. And my husband uses a CPAP machine, which has been a godsend for both of us because he doesn't snore and he sleeps well now. But for him, as an example, his sleep apnea was it was extremely severe, the amount of times he was waking up. And it caused weight gain because, unfortunately, one of the side effects of not sleeping well is increased levels of cortisol, and cortisol for men, one of the cortisol sites where weight can gather is stomach. So he was working out 6 times a week and not losing any weight, and it was a real question mark for us. So it was a real relief when we had him diagnosed, because otherwise we were very confused and concerned as to what was happening. So I would suggest anyone who knows they do snore, or feels like they have a bad night's sleep or disrupted night's sleep, or whose partner that applies to, they reach out to a doctor and have that checked medically. And if anybody wants to reach out to me and have any recommendation for doctors, to be honest with you, that is limited to UAE doctors at this point. But if anyone wants to reach out to me, I can make some recommendations of doctors I know that can help them to understand what's happening with their sleep struggles.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's move on to exercise. So how does exercise affect sleep, and should you be exercising at a certain time of day or anything like that?
Okay, so this is again often a misnomer, and if people come to me, this is one of the areas in which I talk to them about thinking about lifestyle changes with regards to when they eat and what they eat when, and when they exercise and what type of exercise they do when. So my advice, anything after 7 p.m. should be light relief type exercise. Walking is fine, but anything that really raises your heart rate, it takes a while for your heart rate to normalize to a point where you don't have the feeling of revitalization that you do when you go through intensive exercise. So if I wanted to do something intensive, it really sets me up for the day. So I do it in the morning, okay, and I get going and I get on with it, and I feel great. Okay, maybe in the afternoon there's an afternoon slump, but that's very normal for people. So if I do that intensive style of exercise, let's say anytime after 5 p.m, by the time I get into bed at night, that revitalization feeling is still lingering, and it's still quite powerful. So I would say intense exercise is something you just focus on in the morning or the early part of the day, let's say before midday and not before noon. and then your light exercise is you could continue with until the end of the day. Now, I'll just give you an example of where the expert doesn't follow their own instructions. So I go to a gym where I have been doing a weightlifting class, and the weightlifting class is timed at either 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. and it's 90 minutes to 2 hours. So those days I do not sleep well. I come home, I need like 2 hours of wind down in front of the TV, which is the worst thing in the world as well. And then I go to bed, and that is not a good night's sleep for me. I'm not tired out from the exercise in the right way to like just get in the bed and flop and go to sleep. I feel revved up and kind of strong, let's say. And then I watch some TV, which again is not a great thing to do before bed. And so I'm reconciling one thing with another. But because of my profession and what I know, I'm doing it in a conscious way, and I'm managing my life around it. I think if people do it and then think, oh gosh, why haven't I had a good night's sleep, sorry. Oh, tomorrow I'll take it easy. Then they might make some poor food choices because they haven't slept well, and so their eating habits the next day are affected, and so on. You know, that's the kind of thing that would then spiral for a person who doesn't have all the facts. So just to use my example, the next day after that exercise class, I will get up that morning, regardless of what type of night's sleep I've had. I will do some cardio to get me going, to fuel my metabolism. I will make a good, healthy breakfast choice, and that will then help me to like avoid the pitfalls of sugar crashing, feeling lazy, making bad food choices, like lingering in bed in the morning, which isn't good for us if we missed our sort of normal wake up time. So it's about combating one thing with another. I would definitely say intense exercise should be the first half of the day. Definitely say light exercise should be the latter half. But if you do something different, just be conscious and understanding of how it's going to affect you the next day.
Nice. And maybe for someone who doesn't exercise at all, are there any benefits of exercising for your sleep?
Right, great question. Definitely. So we as human beings evolved on the move, okay? We were hunter-gatherers, and we were not really located in one place on a consistent and continuous basis. So we thrive on movement. Being sedentary and being sort of stuck in a chair all day is not how we as a species came to be. So movement is something that our bodies crave, and there have been studies that have shown that a small amount of exercise can reverse the aging process. A small amount of exercise can cure or stave off certain degenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, for example. It's very, very good for cancer, and it's very, very good for those kinds of illnesses that fight our body kind of from within. So yes, we definitely should, as a species, always take some exercise. Now, I'm talking about 20 to 30 minutes of light walking, let's say 4 to 5 times a week. I'm not saying that people have to take up a sport that they don't enjoy, or they have to spend money on joining a gym. Walking is free, and you can fit that into your daily life. I mean, I've been really conscious since the last, say, 3 to 4 months of trying to get my 10,000 steps a day in. Sometimes I do 15,000 because the next day I know I'm not going to be able to do more than 5, and then I'm, balancing it out over the course of a week. But it's so important that we, build that into our lifestyle, because we will definitely rest better. We learn a lot. We also learn while we're moving, so we learn a lot. We take in a lot. So, for example, one thing that can kind of help people to ease into making a lifestyle change, like increasing their exercise, is to find something that they enjoy listening to, whether it's a story, whether it's an interview, whether it's music. It could be listening to the Quran if that's your kind of preference, but it's something that will mean something to you to make you want to go and do it, and then do the two things together, and you will get so much more out of it, and you will probably remember more of what you're listening to than if you just sat around and listened to it. So I really encourage people to just take a little bit of exercise every day, and they will find their sleep and other areas of their life massively improved.
Okay, so let's go into kind of the evening routine and getting into bed. Are there some poor sleep habits or poor preparation habits that people have that they can try and work on?
Yeah. So I did mention television earlier, and I absolutely love television, and television is one way that I do wind down. But I'm also very conscious of what I watch, when, and what I then do before sleep. So the content of what I watch, I have to be very careful about at that time of the day, because if it's too if the subject matter is too either deep or disturbing, sounds like I'm watching something strange, but you know, if it's heavy subject matter, so let's say violent or crime or something where the message that you're receiving is not a cheerful one, then I know that my sleep that night will be affected, because that will linger with me for some period of time afterwards. And then when I'm lying down in the darkness, my brain is still acknowledging and processing that. Okay, so I know what I can watch before bed, and I know what I should avoid. I also turn the TV off at least 30 minutes before bed. To be honest with you, that's quite close to sleep time. And the reason is, you know, we are very beholden to our devices, and we're very attracted to looking at them sort of throughout the day and right up until sleep time. And the thing about it is that the screens that we are using are lit or backlit by light, and that light messes with our circadian rhythm. Now, our circadian rhythm is our connection, basically, to day and night. So again, as our evolvement as a species came from being particularly directed by sunlight as to whether it was day or night, we are still quite tuned into that. But we are now also reliant on artificial or light that we control to determine when we're going to wake up and when we're going to go to sleep. So for me, I always choose to go to bed approximately the same time, because I know my body prepares itself for sleep around that time. If I go too early, it doesn't help me. If I go too late, it will backfire. So I know what time I need to be awake in the morning. Counting back from that, how many hours of sleep I need. I like to be in bed 8.5 hours. So I know what time I need to be in bed. So in our house, for me, I get up at 6:30. That means I need to be in bed, let's say, just before 10. And then I get 8 hours because I'm in bed 8.5 hours. Now, actually, if I get into bed about 10:20, that's okay. If I get into bed at 9:30, it will backfire, because I would lie there for a long time and I basically wake myself up, and then come 10:30, I've missed my sweet spot. So you need to test it for yourself. My advice to people, if they want to look at their screens and their tablets and that kind of thing before bed, directly up to bed, is to get a blue light blocking either screen on top of your device or glasses, because that will really help support this recognition of day and night and light and dark, I should say. Because if we were relying on the sun would have set by 10 o'clock. So I should have been in bed some time ago. And in fact, you probably recognize this, that you start yawning around sunset, or you start to recognize as you're sitting on the sofa at night at the time that you're relaxing, that you're already feeling sleepy. And then what you do is you suppress that feeling, because you don't want to go to bed at 7:30. And by suppressing it, you're creating a situation where you are pushing back on the sleepy feeling. And in order for your body to stay awake, when you push back on the sleepy feeling, your body produces cortisol. So you've chosen to ignore the sleep signals, and therefore, in response, you've produced let's say, a surge of wakefulness, and then you want to go to bed and make one of them go away, which is the wakefulness go away. So the sleepy one comes into fore. So you then need to bring that into the fore and push that one away by having a routine or a process that you follow every night in order to get your brain into the place that acknowledges our sleep's coming next. So I strongly recommend everybody has a bedtime routine, one that suits them, one that they can easily transact every night. So it's definitely individual to your needs and to your preferences. And therefore, when you get into bed, your brain will be properly ready to move from this awakeful piece to this sleepy piece.
So talking about people having their devices and obviously being in front of their laptops, just like we are today, are there any products that we are there any products that we can use that will help, you know, the effects of blue light on us? And are there any you use yourself?
Yeah, so I use products from a company called Visualize. They're here based in Dubai. I'm very, very happy with their products. I'm very, very happy with their service. I think they're fantastic with what they do. They use a particular brand products, and they distribute their products, and they have screens and glasses. My son uses their iPad screen because he is at school and they need to use their iPads for schooling. And so I'm very conscious of his level of device use. I use their screen on my phone, which I actually work on as well as use personally, because I'm on the move a lot and I have a lot of messages from people and I have a lot of kind of contact with my clients throughout the day. So it actually gives me the ability to be responsive no matter where I am and when, without compromising my sleep. So yeah, I strongly recommend and Visualize. I actually have a relationship with them. I'm going to be putting them on my their products on my website, so you know, my customers can see their products directly as well as go directly to Visualize. And I have found that it's meant, which is probably bad in a way, that I can look at my phone right up until I go to sleep and it doesn't affect my sleep. So it might be music to lots of people's ears, to be honest.
You know, we're in a digital world now, and lots of people are working online and on their phones, as well as using them for, you know, pastimes and social media, etc. So it's really important that there's these things around to be able to use, I think.
Exactly. There is a current new, let's call it problem. It was mentioned on the radio yesterday on Dubai Eye, called Zoom fatigue. And it's not necessarily just that I want to mention. It's also the work from home issue. Okay, so it would be very easy for people to misunderstand and overlook the negative impact, or one of the negative impacts of working from home, being that the act of leaving the house and coming in, the brain understands and recognizes what the home is about and what the home is not about. Now, I work from home, and so this is an issue for me personally, but I have clients and I have friends who's limited to their work from home environment such that they have to set up home office up in their bedroom. Okay, and as a sleep consultant, nothing could be more sort of difficult for your sleep if you expect to be able to work and sleep in the same place. And to take this point forward, that applies to children working, doing their schoolwork in their bedroom, and children gaming in their bedroom. This is a big subject for me, and I already feel quite passionate about kind of helping the people to recognize and understand, firstly, why it's a problem, and secondly, strategies that they can do to make it better or improve it or change it. So, for example, if you are working at home, as much as possible, make sure it's not in your bedroom. Okay, if it has to be in your bedroom, then as much as possible, come out of the room and then go to bed. Do not go from the laptop or the desk to your bed. That will be so confusing for you and your brain, and your sleep is going to be compromised. Try and have the workstation out of view. Now, if your room is, you know, not sizable, one thing that I would highly recommend is some form of screening or barrier between the bed and the desk. So there are screens that you can buy, they're really not expensive, the ones that I have researched for clients, you know, a few hundred dirhams, to just create a boundary between the area in which you are working in and the place in which you sleep. So best case scenario is you're not sleeping in and working in the same place. Worst case scenarios you are, but you've created this boundary. If you can take, say, if you have to take, say, work calls in there because you know that you need the privacy, but you can work on your laptop out of there, that would be great. If you can work from cafes sometimes, if you can work from shared office spaces sometimes, things where you can just break up that regularity of being in the home and working will really help you to relax, because what you need to be able to do is switch off. The problem with having your office at home is you're always working. I mean, I work far more than my husband because his office is somewhere else. So, and he actually hasn't brought his laptop home, and he doesn't very much. I mean, he can work on his phone a little bit, but the structure for him is he leaves the house and does his work, and when he walks through his front door, it's not his working day isn't finished, but he's definitely doesn't work here. Whereas my desk is in the corner of our living space, so I'm back and forth to it all the time. I don't switch off. I walk past it, so it's really always there. And that doesn't preserve this relaxation piece that we need in order to sleep.
Okay, so let's talk about what everyone is experiencing now, which is the pandemic. How have our sleep patterns changed, and what issues are we now facing with the new normal?
Yeah, I think the pandemic has kind of impacted sleep in a number of different ways. I think there's this piece around no separation between school and home and work and home, and also being inside more isn't really conducive to what the human body relies on in terms of the understanding of when is day and when is night. So we prefer exposure to daylight during daylight hours to help us to recognize and regulate, so that when sunset comes, we recognize and regulate to that as our sleep time. So if we're inside a lot or inside more or restricted to being inside, then of course we're less exposed to the sunlight, and we're also using artificial light more. That not only suppresses melatonin, but then pushes out that natural rhythm of the sun indicating when we should go to sleep. So there's that part. The working or being homeschooled piece means that you don't leave the house and then come back to your sanctuary. You have the lines blurred between, is this room designed for, we have one big open plan living space. So our open plan living space is where we eat, where we cook, where we relax, now where we educate, where we work. And so, our brain is like coming into the space saying, well, what's going to happen now? And it's not very clear and distinct, which therefore means that we are always creating a question mark in our brains, in our mind, in our brain. Okay, what's going to happen next? Our work spills into our personal time, working on weekends, and that, people talk about work-life balance and striving for work-life balance. I mean, I run my own business, so I'm fairly sort of committed and also keen to strike a work-life balance. But what that can mean for me is working outside of what you would describe as regular hours and into my social life, which then promotes this lack of understanding in my brain as to this time of day would be relaxation time or social time. So we just want to be, always want to be kind to ourselves. We always want to be promoting well-being and ensuring that where we can create separation between the space in which we relax and socialize in, and obviously sleep in as well, and the space where our brain is stimulated and we're active and we're definitely not blurring those lines where we can avoid doing so.
Okay. When we talk about a sleep environment, I think it covers a lot of different things. So what can make or break a sleep environment?
Yeah, this is an area and a subject that I'm really very passionate about in terms of helping people to understand and recognize what might just be some small tweaks or changes that can really improve and promote a good night's sleep. This applies to human beings of all ages, this is not age related or age dependent. There's a piece around this that is from a safety point of view for babies, but without wanting to dwell on that element and be kind of morbid. This just as a basic setup of your room is really going to make a big difference to your sleep. So as a species, we evolved sleeping in caves. So if we can create a cave-like bedroom, we will sleep better. Okay. Our bedroom in my home, my son and my husband and I, you would describe as like caves, as in they are completely pitch black. You cannot see your hand in front of your face. Okay. In the morning, when we wake up, we would not know what time of day it is. Okay. They are also cold. The AC last night in our bedroom was at 18. My son is at 20. If I go into my son's bedroom and at night to kiss him goodnight after I've gone, before I go to bed, like he's already in bed and asleep, sometimes he's very sweaty, or sometimes he's kicked all his covers off because he's hot already. And that's AC at 20. He as a child will feel warmer than me, because that's sort of basically the physiology of child to adult. And so 20 or less is definitely appropriate. 16 to 18 is recommended. We both use air purifiers. So because we've got the AC running, we've got an air purifier running, and that's on a fan. So that's creating an extra element of white noise. But that's the only white noise that we as a family use. If not, white noise is recommended. White noise is, for want of a better word, wind music, or it could be waterfall, it could be waves on the ocean, or it could be that awful sound when the TV's not tuned in. It is not melodies, classical music, lullabies, or anything that's interesting or stimulating or would want you would want to listen to. Okay, so dark, cold, white noise, they are three really key elements to having the room environment set up properly. For children, then you'd want to promote that at nap time as well. Now, creating a dark room at nap time can be difficult, and there are tips and tricks that you can do to make that happen. For adults, when we nap, it's less vital for the room to be completely dark. It's helpful. I mean, it's like an indication of sleep if the room's dark, but it's the middle of the day, but it's not essential. If I wanted to take a nap, I could probably take a nap next to, a live football match. I'd be that keen to be asleep. Doesn't really apply to children. My husband can definitely sleep in what I would describe as most uncomfortable environments because he loves to nap. So if he could sleep, honestly, in any environment, he would be very happy to nap. So those are your kind of fundamentals. In terms of additional things, it would be sensible not to have screens in bedrooms. That is very helpful because even when they're switched off, they're giving off certain kinds of, if they're on standby, they're giving off light, and there's a sense that maybe they're still running even when they're not running. But it's also best to make the bedroom environment peaceful and relaxing. And if you watch TV in bed and then you flip the TV off, you're kind of going from stimulation to not stimulation within the same environment. That's not as clear of a message. So it would be better to have the TV in another room, or the screen that you watch in another room. Other than that, the only other thing I would say about room environment is just to maintain a level of consistency. So, find what works for you and then stick to it, and ensure that you can transfer that as much as possible when you go elsewhere. So hotel, vacation, staying with family, when you travel, that kind of thing.
Lovely. What happens if you have a partner that snores? What tips would you give somebody coping with that?
I want to
Do you recommend earplugs or not so much?
Exactly. I mean, the thing about sharing a bed, whether that's with a spouse or partner or another human being such as your child, is that Human beings are not silent when they sleep, and human beings are not still. So it's all about compromise and understanding and respecting that the one that's asleep has probably got the precedent, because at the end of the day, they're asleep, and it's your tough luck that you're being affected. So you want to find a way for you that makes sure that you're promoting your own sleep, or you're getting the best out of it. So I wore earplugs for years before my husband's sleep apnea was diagnosed. We're very lucky now that he doesn't snore, so it's great. But your choices are limited to what you can make happen. If you cannot go into another room, then yeah, definitely you'd find earplugs and so on. Likewise, if you cannot make your room completely dark, you'd invest in an eye mask. It would just be more things like that you can do more conveniently than changing your curtains and so on. But snoring as an indicator if there's something more wrong is, again, something which I would honestly suggest a medical doctor checks out for you.
If you were to give 5 top tips for a good night's sleep, what would they be?
Okay, so no caffeine after 4 p.m. Try and avoid a heavy meal after 7 p.m. Turn your devices off 2 hours before sleep time. Have a bedtime routine that you repeat night after night, and it can be reasonably brief, and it doesn't have to be super involved, or it could be very, very involved and very sort of scheduled. So some people will do mindfulness and have a bath and journal and then turn the light off, or some people will just wash their face, brush their teeth, put the pajamas on and go to sleep. I mean, either one is fine. It depends on what serves your purpose, but it's repeated and it's in the same order. And then ensuring your room environment is conducive to sleep. So we are very lucky that our bedroom has blackouts. If it didn't, I'd just wear a sleep mask. I wouldn't necessarily need to go out and invest in the blackouts. I could just make it happen through the sleep mask. Dark room and cold is a game changer, to be honest. So the way that plays out is you wear layers on your body. So if you notice the cold more, I notice the cold more than my husband, I go to bed in pajamas, he doesn't need to. So you fix up your room in a way that works for both of you in terms of the compromise of the people sharing the room, but you promote what is needed in order to have a good night's sleep.